The Galactic Federation classifies biological entities into 5 categories of durability. Class 1 are the gelatinous, Class 5 are the exoskeletal. The Aethelguard, my people, are Class 2. We are elegant, intelligent, but brittle. When a Zentari warrior breaks a limb, their biology forces a shutdown to conserve caloric energy. It is a logical, evolutionary safeguard. But then, there are the humans. The species from the prohibited Deathworld known as Terra didn't evolve with safeguards. They evolved with a chemical override system, a poison that floods their neural pathways, silences their logic, and transforms a mild-mannered engineer into a biological catastrophe. We call it chem-induced psychosis. They call it adrenaline. This is the classified log of High-Archivist Vylos regarding the massacre on the transport vessel Celestial Pilgrim. Recording active. Identity confirmed. I am archiving this warning for any captain foolish enough to deny a human's application based on their lack of natural armor. Do not look at their soft skin. Do not judge them by their lack of fangs. Look at their blood chemistry. We had a single Terran on board, Specialist Thorn. He was our structural maintenance officer, compact build. By galactic standards, he looked defenseless. He spent his rotations drinking a boiling toxic stimulant he called black coffee and manually calibrating the engine manifolds. Thorn was quiet. He once apologized to a cleaning drone for stepping in its path. We thought he was the mascot of our crew. We were ignorant. By the stars, we were so ignorant. The incident occurred while we were navigating the Iron Nebula. Our long-range sensors were blinded by the ionic dust, masking the thermal signature of the boarding craft until the magnetic clamps hit our hull. Raiders, the Voraxians, 7-foot hulks of muscle and cybernetic grafting. They didn't hail us. They simply breached the airlock with plasma cutters. Our security detail, 2 Scythian guards, were neutralized in seconds. The Scythian biology is allergic to plasma burns. Their nervous systems went into immediate shock death. It was efficient. It was expected. I was on the bridge with Specialist Thorn. When the blast doors imploded, a shard of reinforced titanium flew across the command deck. It struck Thorn in the upper torso, near the shoulder joint. It was a severe puncture. I saw the crimson fluid, human blood, spray across the navigation console. According to every medical database in the Federation, a mammal sustaining such trauma enters immediate hypovolemic shock. They faint to minimize blood loss. It is nature's way of saying, the fight is over. I looked at Thorn, waiting for him to collapse. I waited for him to beg for mercy. The Voraxian leader, a scarred brute known as Warlord Malachor, stepped onto the bridge, his plasma cannon humming. "Surrender the isotope crates," Malachor growled, "and I will grant you a painless exit." I was opening my vocalizers to comply. Logic dictated total surrender. But then, I heard it, a sound like a pressurized valve leaking, a low, rhythmic growl. It wasn't coming from the raiders. I looked at the human. Thorn wasn't fainting. He was vibrating. His pupils had dilated until his eyes were pure black pools. His respiration wasn't slowing. It was accelerating into short, sharp intakes of oxygen. Later, the ship's bioscanner would reveal that in that microsecond, Thorn's endocrine system had dumped a lethal dose of cortisol and epinephrine into his bloodstream. The human didn't clutch his wound. He reached down and grabbed a heavy kinetic wrench from his utility belt. Warlord Malachor laughed, a dry, rattling sound. "The soft skin wants to play hero? Look, he is already leaking life fluid." Malachor made a fatal calculation error. He assumed the human was broken. He didn't know that Terrans are designed to function better when they are broken. Thorn moved, not with the calculated grace of a martial artist, but with the twitchy, explosive violence of a malfunctioning reactor. He didn't retreat. He launched himself forward. A Voraxian raider fired a warning shot. The plasma bolt grazed Thorn's thigh, singeing the fabric and flesh. The human didn't even blink. It was as if his central nervous system had simply severed the connection to his pain receptors. He collided with Warlord Malachor, a creature 3 times his mass. Physics dictates the human should have been repelled. Instead, Thorn swung the kinetic wrench with such hysterical force that he shattered the Warlord's energy shield in a single blow. I froze. My cognitive processors couldn't make sense of the data. Thorn was screaming. It wasn't a scream of terror. It was a roar, a primal, chaotic noise that bypassed my translator and struck a primitive fear center in my brain. He was taking blows that would pulverize an Aethelgard's bones, and he was baring his teeth. He swung the wrench again, cracking the Warlord's helmet. The other Voraxians hesitated. Evolution teaches all sentient life that prey flees. Prey does not charge into heavy fire. Prey does not bleed and get faster. This moment of biological confusion bought Thorn the time he needed. He scrambled up the Warlord's armor, ignoring the claws tearing at his uniform, and jammed the wrench into the exposed neck cabling of Malachor's suit. The Warlord fell, but the remaining raiders overrode their shock. 3 of them leveled their rifles at the human. "Specialist, cease," I screamed. He didn't hear me. He was in what humans call the red haze, a physiological state where conscious thought is abandoned for pure violence. A plasma bolt struck Thorn squarely in the ribs. I smelled the ozone and burning protein. He was thrown backward, hitting the deck with a sickening crunch. It is done, I thought. The anomaly has been corrected. The Voraxians lowered their weapons, confident the threat was terminated. They turned their optical sensors back to me. And then, the scraping sound of a boot dragging against metal. Thorn stood up. He was scorched. He was bleeding from 2 catastrophic wounds. One arm hung uselessly at his side, the bone likely shattered. But he stood up. He transferred the wrench to his functioning hand. He spat a mouthful of red fluid onto the pristine white deck. He looked at the heavily armed raiders, and he grinned. It wasn't a smile. It was a threat display. "Is that the best you uglies got?" Thorn wheezed. The Voraxians took a step back. I saw their morale crumble. They weren't looking at a soldier. They were looking at a biological impossibility that refused to die. The remaining 3 Voraxians opened fire. But Thorn did not remain a stationary target. He did something illogical. He threw the heavy wrench, not at the soldiers, but at the overhead steam conduit above them. Scalding coolant vapor flooded the bridge. The Voraxians, dependent on thermal vision, were instantly blinded. Their sensors were overwhelmed by the heat cloud. Thorn, however, relied on primitive acoustics and memory. He disappeared into the white fog. I heard the first scream 3 seconds later. It was wet and abrupt. The human didn't fight like a soldier. Soldiers use forms, stances, tactics. Thorn fought like a trapped predator. He used his knees, his forehead, his teeth. When the steam cleared, the second Voraxian was down. Thorn had tackled him, utilizing the higher gravity of the ship against the lighter raider, crushing the alien's thorax with sheer momentum. The last Voraxian, terrified, dropped his rifle and extended his claws for close-quarters combat. He was a specialist in melee duels. He had 4 arms. He should have won. But he made the mistake of trying to grapple a human pumped full of epinephrine. The raider grabbed Thorn's injured arm. The human screamed, but he didn't pull away. He leaned in. He used the pain. He drove his thumb into the Voraxian's optical cluster. It was brutal. It was messy. It was efficient. When the raider fell, twitching, silence returned to the bridge. Thorn stood there, panting. His uniform was shredded. He was covered in blue Voraxian blood and his own red fluid. He looked at me, his eyes wild, his chest heaving like a bellows. "Bridge, secure, Commander." And then, just like that, the chemical fuel ran out. Thorn collapsed. The adrenaline had faded, and the biological debt had come due. We dragged him to the med bay. I activated the autodoc scanner. When the results appeared on the screen, my medical officer, Dr. Saul, nearly vomited. According to the diagnostics, Specialist Thorn had sustained injuries that should have induced a coma 10 minutes prior to the fight ending. 3 fractured ribs, a punctured lung, third-degree plasma burns on his thigh, and a shattered radius bone in his left arm. I looked at the scan, then at the unconscious human. "Doctor," I asked, "how was he standing? How was he fighting?" Dr. Zell pointed at the chemical analysis of his blood sample. "Look at these levels, Commander. Dopamine, endorphins, adrenaline, norepinephrine." His brain literally flooded his body with natural painkillers. He didn't feel the broken arm. He didn't feel the burns. His biology decided that survival was more important than structural integrity. This is the human paradox. Most species evolve to avoid damage. Humans evolve to ignore it until the threat is eliminated. They borrow energy from their own future. They burn their own reserves to buy a few minutes of godlike capability. While he slept, his body began another terrifying process: the healing. We watched as his skin knit together at a rate visible to the naked eye. His metabolism spiked, consuming nutrient paste intravenously at a rate that would starve an Ethelgard. His internal temperature rose to levels that would boil my blood, killing bacteria and cauterizing micro-wounds. We call it fever. They call it an immune response. To us, it looked like his body was at war with itself. Thorn woke up 2 cycles later. He looked at the casts on his arm, the bandages on his chest. He looked at me, confused. "Did we win?" he asked. I nodded. "You killed a warlord and 3 elite raiders, Specialist. You saved the ship." He shrugged, wincing in pain. The monster was gone. The gentle engineer was back. "Sorry about the mess on the bridge," he said. "I'll clean it up when I can walk." I didn't have the heart to tell him that the cleaning drones were still scrubbing the walls. "I am concluding this dossier with a formal petition to the Galactic High Council. The classification of species Homo sapiens must be updated immediately. Currently, they are listed as Class C, Adaptive Engineers. This is a fatal error. They must be reclassified to Class Omega, Biological Berserkers. We assume that because they are social, because they laugh, because they care for small animals, they are harmless. We mistake their kindness for weakness, but we fail to understand the environment that forged them. Earth is a death world. Everything there bites, burns, freezes, or poisons. To survive there, humans didn't just need intelligence. They needed a switch that turns off the sentient being and turns on the survivor. I walked into the mess hall this morning. Specialist Thorn was there. His arm is still in a sling, but he was smiling. He was drinking that black poison coffee and reading a digital tablet about ancient Earth history. He looked up at me. His eyes were soft again. The black voids were gone. "Morning, Commander," he said gently. "Engine output is up to 98%. I looked at him, and for a second, I didn't see the engineer. I saw the creature that ripped a Voraxian's helmet off with broken fingers. I realized then, the monster isn't gone. It is just waiting, sleeping beneath the surface, waiting for the next drop of adrenaline to wake it up. To any captain listening to this log, hire humans. They are the best mechanics, the most loyal friends, and the finest storytellers you will ever meet. But pray to the stars that you never, ever give them a reason to stop being human. and start being Terran. Because when the adrenaline hits, there are no rules. There is only survival. This concludes File Alpha 9, The Adrenaline Paradox. The Deathworld dossier contains thousands of encrypted reports regarding humanity's anomalies, war crimes, impossible victories, and biological horrors. If you possess the necessary clearance and wish to access further files, initiate the subscribe protocol immediately. Leave a record in the comms channel below. Tell us what human trait scares the galaxy the most. Warning: future files may contain hazardous levels of truth. Proceed with caution.